Okay, let me try to get you some statistical information, things that might help when you're modding the game. All right, so let me open up with in. I think that a lot of the crashes are happening because things are being modified before the cell is completely the data structures in the cell is completely built, or the for example, the Fallout script extender or other plugins that the script extender loads provides functions that allows scripts to do things like load references in an area, load objects in an area, things like that. But the problem with that is if you've got one program or one script or one plugin that is actively changing those objects. So let's say you have two I'm going to call them two applications. Well, the application could be a script or a plugin. If both of those are using the same, let's say, function call, and they both load data, so they both load references in a cell, but one of those applications, whether script or plugin, actually deletes a reference. It's going through the list and it's deleting references, but the second one doesn't know the references are deleted, nor does it check. It assumes, hey, I got this list of references, therefore they were there when I executed this function to scan them in, therefore it must be there. And when that happens, then you have an invalid reference, and if they don't check for that before they call to do something on it, or especially if it's embedded in a DLL, a plugin somewhere, yeah, that's going to cause a crash if they don't check for that, because it's going to cause an exception. It's going to cause an invalid exception, an invalid. The exception is going to be memory access, like invalid location or null reference. So that's going to cause that kind of problem. But to start out with, let me show you what I have set up here. I was talking about on the way that I've got my graphic card set up. I'm not sure how it's going to be done on NVIDIA, but I'm sure it's going to be something similar. What I have is fluid motion frames, which allows me to not be tied down to frame updates during vertical sync. And they actually mentioned to turn off vertical sync, which is what I should have done. Let me see where it is here. It's, let's see, vertical refresh. Actually, I got this always on. Let me put always off. I thought that had always off because I thought it said, see, I even contradicted myself. All right, hang on, let me see. I thought I read where this is better with it turned off. Let's see what that does. I'm not sure, but let's see what it does. So that was the option I picked, and then I have the anti-lag. Then I went in, and it's interesting because even though I have vertical sync always on, I'm still getting 100-something frames per second. So that's not tied to vertical sync, because I'm pretty sure my monitor, I think it does more than 60 hertz, but don't quote me on that. I don't think it does 144. It might, but I haven't really looked at it. I don't really use I don't really use anisotropic filtering because at 1440p I don't really need it. At lower resolutions I would probably need it. I turned on morphological anti-aliasing to give it a little bit of anti-aliasing. I don't know if that's necessary or not, but I'll play around with the settings and see. Okay, so let's talk about like the load order. Okay, so with the load order, with my current load order, I've got about 158 plugins, and only 64 of those plugins are actually not light plugins. The light plugins are kind of this purplish color. And those 64 include the officials. So those are included that 255 limit, because that's really what that is. That's basically a limit, and then this is how many I truly have total. This is total, and this is every plugin that's not a light plugin. So I've still got plenty of headroom. It is a modded game, so it's definitely modded. It definitely has plugins in it, but most of the plugins are fairly selective. I do have things like I mentioned before, I do have things like, Pack Attack, which they say script heavy and all that kind of stuff. I have very few weapons. I do have some texture replacers, things like that. Over here, I wanted to show you that I went ahead and set this up so that whenever you run a program, it will actually check to see which DLLs don't load, since I noticed that came up earlier where people were having that problem, and I thought, you know what, I don't like to manually check stuff, so I'm writing this. So I thought I'm gonna throw this in there. It's simple to do. And what I wanted to show you, I mean, of course, there's power tools, right? That one we know. But what I wanted to show you was this one. This one right here, which is an MSD Diagnostic 140. I believe that comes with Visual Studio. I think I looked it up. This right here actually is packaged with the Buffout 4 NG. But this is not being loaded by Fallout 4 Script Extender. So it may be okay, because maybe this doesn't belong to Fallout 4 Script Extender. Maybe it belongs to the Buffout 4 DLL, which then uses that to, it actually helps to parse the PBD. I think it's the debugging file that's provided with the DLLs, with the plugins. So whenever they compile plugins for F4SC, they can put a debugging package or a debugging file that comes with it. So if it crashes, it can access the debugging information, which provides a little bit more information about what that plugin was doing. I think it provides parameters, things that may be on the stack, things like that. What functions in that DLL were called, what parameters might have been passed to it. I believe that's what it does. So it kind of helps to debug it. But that one isn't being loaded, so that may or may not be okay. Over here, what I wanted to show you is the amount of times that I've played it. Now, earlier I had crashes, but those crashes were when I saved a game inside of a location. Like, let's say I went into the Corvega building. I saved it. It saved just fine. I can exit the building, and I can save the game, reload it. It loads just fine. But if I load a saved game that was from an interior cell, that is an instant crash, and it is a completely repeatable crash. It's almost absolutely guaranteed. And I'll show you in a minute what's throwing that. It was actually Spell Perk Distributor that is throwing it, and he's intentionally throwing an exception to literally crash the program. He's causing Fallout 4 to completely exit. So he's the one that's bringing, he's the one that's forcing a CTD. Okay, so let me go back over. So let me go over here and show you this real quick. So let me bring up the summary here for the load orders. I'll eventually clean all these out. But so these are the crashes that I've had. Okay, these are like the total crashes, and I've had some kind of interesting issues, which I'm not really sure relates to the crashes. It probably relates to something in the load order. I'll kind of go into that a little bit later. But there's not very many issues. Like, I don't have a lot of them. You can see some of them are already resolved. I figured out what they are. Some of them are open. There's not a lot. But so these crashes I've had up here before I installed Buffout 4. There were crashes somewhere up in this area. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to manually, because remember, I think I mentioned on the forum that I'm not getting any crash information because I was actually looking for I was looking for an event, an actual system event, an application event, where it crashed, and then I wasn't getting those, and I thought, okay, something's odd, so I'll just manually type them in, and that's what I did here. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to install buffout 4, and then once I tried to save in an interior cell, reload, it crashed. But some of the things I wanted to show you was, if I overlay, okay, this is based off the manifest. The manifest is over here. Okay, so the manifest basically shows the changes that I did to my game. This is what this does. And that's what the purpose of this is. It's to give me a trackable record of what was actually done, and then I can link that back over here to my actual gaming sessions. So that way I could see, okay, if I started crashing, if I didn't crash before and now all of a sudden I started crashing, maybe I changed it. But if I'm constantly changing things, I'm not sure where in that whole cycle of changing and reloading game saves the problem started. So this it's a very simple thing to help me isolate it. I went ahead and added some simple icons over here to show when mods were added and when mods were removed. So that's what this minus means. So as you can see, from the time I started, these, usually if you look at the first session here, if you're looking at this particular thing, just so you can kind of see like how I do this statistically, or how I represent the information. These additions appeared before the very first gaming session here. So these right here, if I started crashing right off the bat, it could be one of these, but also it could be something that previously existed maybe. It just depends on if any loose files or anything was left in my game folder. This is the first, these are probably the very first mods. Yeah, these are the very first mods I installed here before I ran the game the first time to actually see if it was going to work and, you know, if it was going to crash. So that's what I was kind of mentioning earlier. I put the F4 SC stuff in, fired it off just to see what was going to run, what was going to stick and what wasn't. Then I added a few more things, fired it off, fired the game off again to see if everything was going to be okay. And then I was looking for the reason it was crashing. So you'll see a lot of this putting things back in like this, trying to find out, and then I started trying to figure out why was it crashing, you know, because something was causing the crash, and it was that rebalance patch. And I remember reading it on the mod author's page, but I had installed so much stuff and read so much stuff, trying to go back and think, oh, I knew I seen it, but I wasn't sure where. So I thought, okay, I'm going to add these mods back in, or try to figure out, you know, try to add them in. I started adding more mods in. And then this is me trying to add and remove plugins. That's why you see a lot of this plugin tech stuff. This is me adding and removing plugins from the load order, you know, trying to figure out what is causing the problem. And then I would activate, I thought, okay, maybe it's the grass or something. I activate the grass plugins. So that's what all this is. This is me trying to figure out why it was crashing right off the bat. And once I figured it out, once I realized it was rebalanced, then I could start putting mods in that I wanted to use. And that's what you see. That's what you see from this point forward. When I couldn't get, this is me when I couldn't get the, I think it was the dialog menu or something. I couldn't get it to work right. So I had to remove the things I put in it, and then I would try putting them back in a specific order and see if that caused the problem. So this is me trying to figure out why extended dialog interface didn't work. I had to take it out, put it back in. I was trying to track down the problem. That happened to be where I have a loose file. Like extended dialog interface needs a specific, it needs its own dialog menu SWF, SWF file. It needs one of those. That was part of the problem. Give me 1 second. And, okay. So that's me trying to track down the problem. But what I wanted you to notice is I added a ton of mods. I took out a few mods. but I consistently added mods during my playthrough. See, adding mods, adding mods, adding mods. I just consistently added mods. Now, these are the crashes I got. I don't really have, this is me typing in the text. I put buff out somewhere. I think it's coming up here. Let me see. Right here. So here's where this is where I installed buff out. So then I started getting crash logs. So that's what we see here. And if you take a look at the crashes I'm getting, okay, this is like one of the crash logs. This is what's throwing the exception. It's right here. This is forced. And this is done by his spell perk distributor. He is forcing the exception. Right here's where he's throwing it. And if you look at the stack, I believe it's going to show here. This is where I'm trying to load a game in Park Street Station. I tried to load, I wanted to test it. I thought, okay, let me see if Park Street Station is okay. So I saved inside that interior location. I went to load it, and sure enough, he threw the exception. And those are pretty much consistently all these exceptions I'm getting. That's what the crashes are from this point forward. But as you can see, I add mods. These are mostly just texture mods. I do add companion status. I do add some things to the HUD. I had to take this out because this does not work with the NG version. I added things like volume sliders. I thought I added some companion. Let me look it up here. Let me see. Alright, let me take a look here real quick. Yeah, I thought I added companion thoughts. Here I did, yeah. So I did add things that modify speech, like the speech trees, things like that. I had to take, like, disable collision. I had to take things like that out because it just simply didn't work. It doesn't work for the NG version. But I wanted you to see that I did add and remove some mods. I added really a lot more mods than I removed, but I did a little bit of both. Now, if we go over here and take a look at... Alright, give me a second here. Let's take a look at... I want to see... It's... I think it's recent... Okay. It's Fall Rim. Okay. So if we take a look at Fall Rim tools, let me open up this location real quick. And this is just the mod folder where Fall Rims was extracted. Okay, so that is not what I'm looking for. Oh, that's Fall Souls. Oh, here we go. Okay, this is what I want. I clicked the wrong one. Okay. So if we take a look at Resaver, if we bring this up, okay, let's bring up Resaver. And this is the thing you can use to clean your... Wow, that's a big screen. Alright, so let's go to... let's do it like this. Documents. I want my games. And then we want Fallout 4. Okay, we want saves. Alright, so let's grab this one. This is one of my last saves. I gotta shrink this thing down. This is the previous version. Alright, so if we take a look, it literally said there were 11 instances, I think. There are 11 instances. Let me see if I can get like a filter. Show unattached instances. Okay. See, so there's 11 unattached instances in my game save, and that is not causing me to crash. So whatever these are, whether it's from where I removed a mod, I updated something, because some of these additions over here could be me updating to a new version. Whether it's something like that, I'm not sure, but it could be. But those are not causing me to crash. And so far, if you go look at the literal time that I've played over here. So I've played for 3 days and 15 hours, I believe, coming up on about 16 hours. So when it means 3 days, it doesn't mean like 3 days counted by where the day changes. I actually accumulate the game time in hours, and then I divide that by 24. So that means I've played 3 times 24 hours. I think it's like 72. So I played 72 hours plus 16 is what, 88. So I've played coming up on 90 hours. And the only crashes, well, one crash was at the beginning when a laser turret hit a ghoul. And I think something was trying to update the body or something, and that's what caused the crash. I didn't have buff out 4, so I don't really have any data on that. The other crash I had when I tried to save right after I imported a settlement, before everything kind of settled. I didn't really leave. I think I left the cell. Can't quite remember. But that was right after I imported a settlement. Those are the only 2 crashes, which that one may have been preventable had I waited a little bit longer and then left the cell. Those are the only 2 crashes that I had that were outside of loading or saving a game in an interior location, interior cell, and then trying to reload that game while I'm in an interior cell, even if I go outside of that cell. So let's say I go in Park Street Station to find Nick. If I save in there, then go outside, back out to the Commonwealth, and I try to reload that save, it will crash. Almost any save in an interior location, the exception is forced. It's the spell perk distributor actually throws the exception. So apparently he's detecting some kind of corruption or something somewhere, and he's throwing it. However, I am not having, the game itself does not crash. But one of the things I am getting is, and I just noticed it when I went to Dunwich Borers. There were 2 miners running around who had no clipping, so there was no collision data, so there was no collision mesh. Although they had a mesh, I could clearly see them. They were running around, so they had AI, and they had physics because they could interact with the environment. They couldn't open a door, and nothing could attack them. There was no collision mesh. Somehow the collision mesh wasn't there, or they didn't have collision meshes to begin with, and they may have not have had them. But there were only 2. And when I clicked on them, I probably was clicking on the fog. So when I clicked on them, I went into the console and clicked on them, I didn't really get a reference. Oh, I did get a reference. The reference was, no, I don't think I got a reference. I think that was the fog or something. So, and I wasn't thinking I could get closer to them. It just didn't dawn on me at the time. However, when I went back to Sanctuary at a later time, I did notice that Piper and one of the settlers had the same issue. Except they were standing still and not moving. They weren't T-posing. And they had no clipping. There was no collision. There was no collision data. I could run through them. So I had to fix that by disabling and re-enabling. So something is not fully loading, or something is interfering with somehow those NPCs are getting fully initialized. I haven't noticed that in any other settlement yet, just Sanctuary. And this is I noticed this, I think, yesterday. So it's taken this long for it to come out. I'm not really sure what's causing that yet. So I don't know if it's adding or taking away mods. Not really sure at this point, and I don't really like to point a finger at something, or really say, unless I have something that I know is doing it, like this, where I have the data to back it up. Because the internet to me is it's like the ultimate game of telephone. You post one thing and then it spreads like wildfire, whether it's true or not. So I don't really know what's causing that just yet to actually say, oh, hang on, I know what it is. But I wanted you to see that the game, the amount of time that I played, the crashes that I had, and what pretty much all of them were related to. So other than really 2 crashes, one I could have prevented. So one crash without buff out, I'm not really sure what the cause of it was because I have no data to look at. It was So really, I probably only had one crash out of coming up on 4 days, 48, let's see, four, yeah, so you're talking 96 hours of gaming. I've really only had one crash. So it's pretty stable. And adding or removing things doesn't necessarily cause the issue. Having loose scripts doesn't necessarily cause the issue. Um, so that's pretty much what I got so far. I hope this helps some. When the forum is back up, I'll be able to post the load order, my load order here, and any other kind of information I think might be able to help. But I hope that helps you out and kind of lets you see, how some things that everybody says, oh, this is definitely an issue causer, it may or may not be. It really just depends on the severity of the change and what's being changed. Um, so, yeah, hope that helps, and good luck with your game, and I'll see if I can come up with some more information here in a bit.